Hi, this is Ronnie from One Beyond, and I wanted to give you all a quick tour of our automated cameras and automated lecture capture solutions to form a basis of conversation of what you might want to do. Let me first introduce you to the folks in the room here and the technology that we have in the room. So we're using an MXA910 ceiling array to pick up the audio. All of this that you're watching is getting recorded in the One Beyond capture box called Automate Select. So that is the system that I'm using for this demonstration, and I have Richard and Chris here to help me out. All right, great. Let's jump right into it. And I'm going to switch to a view here where you can see me and some slides. And this just gives you an overview of the products we're going to be talking about: the AutoTracker camera, the AutoFramer camera, and our automated switching, compositing, media processing solution, which comes in two flavors: Automate Select and Automate VX. We actually have those combined in one, so you can also have them combined, which is what I'm demonstrating right now. So let's talk very briefly about Automate Select, since that's what I'm using right now for my presentation. So what you'll see here is Automate Select makes scenario-based lecture capture super simple. Some lectures are using a blackboard or a whiteboard. Some are using PC slides, right? And at the beginning of a class, a professor knows whether they're going to be using the blackboard or slides, or maybe in the middle they want to switch, right? So we make it super simple to set up in advance different scenarios. That's what we call, and you get to select the scenario you want. The scenario includes not just the layout on the screen, but also the presets in the cameras. So right now you can see I have a scenario where I've got my laptop screen and I've got my AutoTracker in the bottom. But I could just as well switch to a different scenario, which is side by side. So here you've got the AutoTracker again, but over here you have the whiteboard. If I come over here, you can see the whiteboard, right? And what's nice about that is I may be presenting and then walk over here, but the students are still going to want to maybe take notes from the whiteboard, right? So you get both views. And obviously you can do any combination. So I could also have my PC content and the whiteboard all in one shot. Similarly, I can just go to just the AutoTracker. So why don't we do that right now to give you a quick AutoTracker demo. So you've seen the camera before. It uses motion detection and facial recognition to track me, really smooth tracking. I can turn my head and it still tracks me. I can write on the board. And if I walk out of the tracking zone, it goes to a home position. So we've defined a tracking zone so that when I walk to here, it goes to a home position. When I walk back into the tracking area, it detects my motion, it focuses in on my face, it adjusts the camera height so that it's ideal for me and not somebody taller than me. And if somebody else walks across in the view, it doesn't get distracted by that, so students can come in late. The camera still continues to focus on me, okay? And if I want to stop teaching and sit down, Richard can get up and be my next professor. So there, it just seamlessly switched to Richard, and you can see it also adjusted for his height. If Richard now sits down, and I get up and walk into this area, you can see the camera just naturally picks me up, adjusts for my height, and that's how the AutoTracker works. Okay, so now let's switch to another scenario, okay? So I'm gonna switch just with one button push here, and this could be, we have an API for the Crestron, so on a Crestron you can select this, you can select it on a laptop browser, you can select it on an iPad. I'm now gonna switch to the AutoFramer live video, and we're gonna, let's see, AutoFramer. we have a lot of buttons here for different presentations formats. Okay, so there's my AutoFramer camera in its home position, and Chris is now going to turn on tracking because we're also using it as a non-tracking camera. And so he's just going to set up the tracking. And what you can see, what the AutoFramer does is it detects who's in the room and frames optimally. So if Chris now sits down next to Richard there, obviously there's nobody in the room here operating cameras or whatever. In a second, the camera discovers, oh, there's another person in the room, let's frame for them. Now, if I sit down next to them as well, okay, here we are. In a second, you're going to see that it frames for all of us. And right now, I did notice we have the calibration a little off, so it normally would not chop Chris off. Sorry about that, Chris. Okay, so that's the AutoFramer. It's designed for smaller rooms, framing a group of people. It's not really designed for tracking a given professor. We can talk about the details on that. But that's the AutoFramer. All right, so we've covered now. Let's go back to that slide. All right, if I go back to my slide view here. Okay, we've now covered the AutoTracker, the AutoFramer, and Automate Select. That's what I've been using for selecting the layout that we're recording here and the scenario that we're in. And what we're now going to do is switch on the voice activated switching. Okay, so I'm going to go to my Automate VX page and I'm going to hit Auto Switch. And what this is going to do, Richard, you can see that as soon as it kicked in, it noticed that I was talking. And because of the way the lobes are configured in the room, the microphone lobes, our system knows that the audio is coming from the presenter. So it switches to the AutoTracker camera, and as I walk around, obviously it's on me. But if a student has a question, like Richard, why don't you ask a question?
Sure. So if I start talking, I have a question for the professor, so the camera will switch over to me.
And then if I, answer his question, it cuts back to me. Now, the first time you're going to see a little camera motion like that, that's something we're fixing. From there on in, you're going to notice that all cuts are clean cuts. So if Chris, you now ask me a question.
So if I now say something, the microphone recognizes that a person over here is talking, and it automatically recalls the correct preset for that, so I'm in the frame.
Okay, great. And that was a good question. There are no bad questions in the world. And yeah, so the discussion goes back and forth like that, totally automatic. Nobody has to be running cameras or anything. And what we didn't set up just now for lack of time, but we can do that, is we can combine the layouts that you saw there with the Automate Select along with the active camera switching, so that what you get is, let me turn the auto switching off right now, just so that we go back to that that view of the live and PC content. So what we can also do is do layouts like this with the Automate VX. So the video window there would automatically switch based on who's talking, and yet the slides still advance like that. And this last slide here shows you, in case we want to discuss it, how the tracking zones and blocking zones are defined. But anyway, thank you all very much. I look forward to meeting you in person and answering any questions you might have. Thanks.